In Acts chapter 16. Verse 23. Acts chapter 16. Verses 23 to 26. Well, I'm going to read the text. I'll shout out, but I'm going to read this prayer. Acts chapter 16, verses 23 through 26. Says, and when they had laid many stripes on them, they cast them into prison, charging the jailer to keep them safe. Y'all babies don't have to be still. Sit right there. Y'all sit down. Y'all sit down. This is training. These babies, I'm glad they know how to sit down. And you grown folks, don't have to call your name. Amen for the babies. Verse 23 says, when they had laid many stripes on them, they cast them into prison, charging the jailer to keep them safely, who having received such a charge, thrust them into the inner prison and made their feet fast in stocks. And at midnight Paul and Silas prayed and sang praises unto God, and the prisoners heard them. And suddenly there was a great earthquake, so that the foundations of the prison were shaken. And immediately all the doors were open, and everyone's bands were loose. And at midnight Paul and Silas prayed and sang praises unto God, and the prisoners heard them. In the meantime, that's what I want to talk about. In the meantime. In the meantime. In a crisis situation, most if not all of the time, it comes by surprise. If you've ever been in a crisis situation, one thing we tried to do last week and this week, as well as a couple of weeks, is to discuss and challenge us to be aware of crisis situations. You know, crisis situations are real. We are in our world in a crisis. We are in a crisis, the world that we live in economically. We are in a crisis. Whenever you can go to work after 10, 20 years of being on the same job, walk in the door and your boss hands you a pink slip and say that your services are no longer needed. That can place you in a crisis. if you go on in your mailbox and you find a notice saying to you that you have 1 week to pay your note, and your house note has ballooned from what it was when you started, and you're about to be put out of your home, that's a crisis. My New Orleans family, a few years ago when the hurricane swept through the land, and in a matter of moments, all their belongings and all their earnings and what they had worked for was vanished with water. That placed many of them in a crisis. Some who've been married for any length of time, and for some reason or another, something occurs that your lifestyle has to change. That places us in a crisis. And because, sisters and brothers, this life is full of it. No matter who we are, or where we're from, or what we've done, or what we've accomplished, we are susceptible to a crisis. And since the person that you are sitting next to, or sitting in front of, or sitting behind, because that person who's sitting in the seat where you are sitting could possibly be headed toward a crisis. Because that person who's sitting in the seat that you're sitting in, that person who's sitting beside you or behind you or in front of you, could well be going through a crisis right now. Somebody needs to know, what do you do in the meantime that while you're in the midst of a crisis? What do you do in the meantime while you are facing a crisis situation in your life? What is it that you do in the meantime? I'm going to hurry and tell you about 3 things. King James, New King James translation of verse 25 says, but at midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the prisoners were listening to them. 3 things you do in the meantime. If you're in a crisis, you know somebody in a crisis. In the meantime, first thing, keep praying. In the meantime, while you're in the midst of your crisis situation, it does not matter what it is, or watch this, it does not matter who it is, but whatever your crisis situation is, in the meantime, keep praying. It's right here in the text. It was at midnight, Paul and Silas were praying, which means that they were praying together. They were talking to God, having communication with God. And I think I want to tell you, sisters and brothers, Paul and Silas at the time were a team. Now, don't have anybody on your team who don't want to pray. That's right. Amen. Don't allow somebody in your circle